Okay. So if you have created your coding rooms account and your Replit account, and so we can start. So as I was saying, from tomorrow we're going to be using coding rooms for all the classes. And the beauty with coding rooms is that I can see all your screens and what you're doing, especially if we have like an activity that you're doing together. So you're working on an activity in your own machine, everyone is working on their own machines, but I can go around looking at all the screens and seeing what are you guys doing. Yeah, so that's the beauty of Replit. It's the beauty of coding rooms. It's so versatile and so amazing. Yeah. So, but there are some limitations because I'm using the free version. So to get some more capabilities out of it, or some more features out of coding rooms, you have to pay for that. But right now, I think the free version will do it for us. Okay, so I've created this course. This is a course that you're going to be working on every Thursday. And today we have three assignments from this course. So we are going to do these in class and go through them in case anyone gets stuck. Okay, so just going to copy this URL. So there's that URL that I've dropped. So click on that. And in case you're asked for student join code, you enter that code that I've dropped on the chat. Do that and let me know when you're done, when you've joined the class. Sorry, the code that I've pasted is missing one letter. Let me repaste it again. Yeah, like that.
No, sir. He didn't ask for any code. In, but he didn't ask me for any code.
Sorry?
I mean, the coding, the course platform, but he didn't ask me for any code. So I can see the assignment, the 3 assignments for the
yeah, it's not asking for the code, right?
Yeah, he didn't ask for it.
Yeah, that's good. I didn't set there's a setting whereby you can set that you can set that any person who joins the class should have that join code, just like Zoom sometimes. Someone is asking me to repeat. What are we doing with the code? You just join after you've created your coding room account and your Replit account. So follow that URL that I've dropped and join the class, join the course. Okay. Someone else is saying there are 2 options, either join with code or link. Yeah, you can join with link because or you can use either because I've given you the link and the code. Sorry?
Sorry.
Okay, so since this is an open session, everyone is like contributing or asking questions. I'll request you to keep your mics on mute unless you're asking a question, please, so that you don't have a lot of interruptions. So if you're not using your mic, just keep it on mute instead of me muting everybody. Can see some of you have joined. Anybody who has not joined yet?
Recording in progress.
Okay, I hope everyone has joined. Because I can see your names here. So I hope everybody has joined and we're set to go. So today we are starting afresh. I remember we had one session whereby like we ambushed you with a lot of information about Python. And if you don't have a background in programming, then that must have been quite a lot for you. So present the link. Somebody copy the link that I've sent you for coding rooms and drop it on the chat. Someone is asking for the link. Okay, so so today we're going to look at basic or primitive Python data types. And before we proceed, I think we have the notes for today's class. I've created a new repository called Python programming classes. So we have this code. We have this repository, and we have this first class, primitive data types and string manipulation. So that's what we are going to dwell on today. And I want to make sure by the end of this session, you understand the basic or the primitive data types in Python and how to manipulate strings. And we're going to have a few projects or a few activities that will enhance that. Yeah. So I want us to learn by doing. So we learn a small concept, we exercise that, then we learn another small concept, exercise that. And at the end of the day, I hope you'll be able to grasp everything that we are learning. And if you don't pressure yourself. These things take time. So come back tomorrow, look at what we've covered today. Yeah, keep showing up and keep practicing. That's what I would say. Yeah, so for those who were not in the Slack channel, let me drop the link for the GitHub repository. So that's the repo. You can clone it and get the notes on your local machine, but you don't need to do right now. Yeah, a lot of code will be writing on Replit, and the assignments will be on coding rooms. And those assignments, you can access them for as long as that I've not deleted that course. So don't worry too much about downloading the notes right now. Just follow along. You can use Replit to exercise. Okay, so the objective of the class today, by the end of the class, you should be able to create a simple cab fare calculator. So this time I traveled to our Africa Data School offices in Nairobi. So I used cab, and I got this receipt from this cab company called Little. Yeah, and I looked at the receipts, and you can see they have the base fare, the cost per kilometer, cost per minute, and then you have the distance covered and the time taken. Yeah, so this is the receipt. I've these boxes here. You see these are the driver's name and their car registration and their image here. So I didn't want to display that, but you can see the car model is a Mazda Demio that I used. Okay, and my fare was 830 shillings. So we're going to use Python to create something like this based on these receipts. Yeah, so we'll have the base fare, we'll have the cost per kilometer, the cost per minute, and then take the distance covered and the time consumed, and then calculate our fare. And our app or our program will be also ask for you to give the driver a tip if you want to, yeah, a percentage of the total amount. Okay, so this is what we'll do. This is what we'll be creating, yeah, an app like this. So if I run this replit, yeah, sometimes it does this, updates its packages. Then, so you have this ASCII art here that says cab fare. Then you're asked to enter the distance covered in kilometers. I'll say 18 kilometers. The time taken, I'll say in minutes. I'll say 63. What percentage of the tip would you like to give? Whether 0, 5, 10, any percentage. Yeah. In this case, I'm not going to give a tip. I'm going to say 0. And then the app will do this to calculate the fare, and it will return your fare is this amount, and then this message, thank you for riding with us. Yeah, so that's a very basic program that you're going to be doing today. But before we do that, there are a few concepts that we want to learn, like string manipulation, the input function in Python, and also the primitive data types in Python. Okay, so without further ado, let's dive in and look at the primitive data types in Python. And the first one is, there are 4 main primitive data types in Python. One is the strings. Then we have integers, then floats. What is the code? Tabitha, can you unmute yourself and ask? I don't understand the question. What do you mean by what is the code?
When I've registered,
yeah,
it tells me it looks like you're not enrolled in any course yet. Please contact your instructor to give for your course join link, or use a join code to enroll in a course.
But the link has been dropped in the chat by Justice and Collins. Can you see?
That's what I used. That is what I used.
Then it's asking you for the code.
Yes.
The code has been dropped by there's this person called
I've seen.
Funmi, please, if you want to contribute to the chat, just send your chat to everyone. You're just sending direct messages to me and everyone else is not seeing it. So change that to everyone so that everyone can see your. Okay, so if now you have the code, then we shall proceed. So you've said that there are 4 main primitive data types in Python. That is strings, integers, floats, and booleans. And we're going to explore what each one of those means. Starting with the strings. And strings are basically sequence of characters. Yeah, it can be your name, the name of a person. It can also be a number. Yeah. It can also be a decimal point. Yeah. So it can be anything, a string of characters. Yeah. And remember, our machines, our computers don't understand the characters. Basically, the computers understand zeros and ones. So if you enter a string, down to the computer, that string will be broken down into a sequence of zeros and ones using either the ASCII or other means of decoding that string into something that the computer can understand. And to see that, you can look at the ASCII table, which converts now the strings to zeros and ones. Okay, where is the Ascii table? This one here. You can see all these are ASCIIs. So the binary value of letter capital A is this, capital B is this, 01000010. Yeah. So this is what a computer understands. These binary digits, zeros and ones. Yeah. So any string that we enter in our machine, at the very core of the computer, it will be converted into binary code. Okay, and we're saying that strings are just a sequence of characters in Python or in any other programming language, really. Okay, and in Python, strings are surrounded by either single quotation marks or double quotation marks, or even sometimes you can use triple quotation marks to depict a Python string. Okay, so we're going to define a string in Python, and we're calling it my string. And we're going to give it a value of hello world. So this is a variable. And this variable stores this value hello world. And you can see, since this is a string, it's surrounded by these quotation marks. These are single quotation marks. And you can do the same using double quotation marks. Yeah. And you can also use triple quotation marks. Yeah. But most of the time you find programmers in Python using these two, single or double. This one is not really common unless if you are using a multi-line string. If you're creating a multi-line string, then you can use triple quotations. Yeah, so these are 3 quotations on this side and 3 on this side. Or they can also be triple doubles. Yeah, so these are triple singles because we're using a single. So you can also have something like this. So these are triple. And on this other side, like that. Yeah, so you can have these triple singles or triple doubles, double quotations. Yeah, but this is not really common. What is common is this part here, whereby if you want to create a multi-line string or a string that spans multiple lines, then you can use triple quotations. Yeah, and they can also be doubles or singles. Doesn't really matter. Both triple quotation or double quotation and a single quotation in Python mean the same thing. Okay, so you create a multi-line string and assign it to a variable, and this variable you're calling it my string. But if you don't assign it to a variable like this, we remove this and you're left with something like this, then this becomes a multi-line comment in Python. Yeah, or even something called a docstring. When we get to functions, we're going to look at docstrings. Yeah, so if you don't assign a variable to it, it becomes a Python multi-line comment. And if we run this cell, you can see this part is not being printed out. Yeah, because we have not given it any variable. But if we return the variable, you see now we have this line here that spans multiple lines. Yeah, and if you're writing multi-line strings and you don't want to have this space, then you need to remove this space here. Yeah, so even if you're defining a function, and you remember in a function you have to ident, but if you're doing a multi-line string, don't really ident, just go back to the start of the line. Okay, so that you don't have these annoying space here. So if we run this again, now you see we have our strings, our first 4 strings, and our multi-line string here. Okay, so that's it for string data types. You'll come across these data types quite a lot, and also other data types that we're going to be looking at. So if you come across anything that is enclosed inside either single quotation marks or double quotation marks or triple singles or triple doubles, then that is a Python string. Okay. Questions? Any question about strings before we move on and look at how you can access different characters in a string? Question? Okay. 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 So if there's no question, let's move on and look at accessing individual characters or a section of characters in a string. And in Python, we can access individual characters in a string using indexing. And Python starts its index from 0, yeah? Or we can say Python is 0 indexed, yeah? So the first character in a string has the index of 0, the second one has the index of 1, the third one has the index of 2, all the way to the last, yeah? So if you want to access a certain character, then you need to get its index in that string, and then you're able to get that character from the string based on that, on its index. Okay, so I'm going to open Sketch. And here in the Sketch, I'm going to write a string, for instance. So I'm going to say hello, like that. And this is a string in Python. So you're going to give it a value of a variable name, let's say greet. We're greeting someone. And this is a string. It's enclosed inside these quotations. Yeah. So like we're saying that, so I'm going to add these spaces just to explain further what I mean. So I'm going to add a space here and another one. Okay, so that you can see the letters more clearly. So what we're saying is the first character in the string, this one here, has the index of 0. This one has the index of 1. This one has the index of 2, index of 3, and then finally index of 4. So this is the index of 0, 1, 2, 3, and finally 4. Okay, so if you want to access the first item in this string, or the first character in the string, which is H in this case, so you need to get its index. And its index in this case, since it's a first character, its index is 0. Okay, and the way we do that, the way we access a string or a character in the string using its index is by using square brackets. Yeah, so remember this string, it has a variable name. So this is a variable name. Variable name, we're calling it var. Okay. So if we want to access this first item, so we're going to write our variable name, which is greet. And then inside square brackets, we're going to add the index of that character. Yeah. If you're interested in the first character, then it has the index of 0. Yeah. And now this is how you can access an individual character based on its index in a string. Okay. So you type in the variable name, then square brackets, and then the index of that character. And this 0 points to this character here. And this should return, H. Like that, because this is the first character in this string here. Okay, but when you're accessing these characters, you need to be a little bit careful, because if you access a character using an index beyond the maximum value, the maximum length of that character, then you're going to get an index error. Okay. For instance, you see our last index here is 4, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. But if you try and do something like this, great. Then you go to 5. So this one is going to give an error. And the error it gives is index error, which means that this index that you're trying to access, the index 5, is not in this string here. It's the index of 5 is beyond the length of this string. Okay, and we can see that in action here. If we have a string called greet, and we assign that to a variable called greet, and we assign that variable to hello, and then we try to access an index that is out of range, that is index 5, then we're going to get index error, and then this error will be raised, string index out of range, because if you count these starting from 0, the last index is 4, and we're trying to get 5, and 5 now is out of the range of this string. So we are going to get we are going to get that index error. Another thing is that whatever you put inside the square brackets, the index should be an integer. Yeah, and an integer is a whole number that does not have any decimal. Okay, if you pass in something like a float or a decimal point, then it's not going to work. Like if you say great, then you want to access 1.0, like that. This one is going to give you a type error. Yeah, because the index data type has to be an integer, cannot be anything else. Okay, and if we try to do that again here, if we try to create another, again, a great, hello, then we say great 1.0, then we're going to get a type error, and you're going to get this type error with a message string indices must be integers. Okay, so anything that you pass inside these square brackets must be an integer and cannot be anything else. It cannot be a string, cannot be a float, cannot be a Boolean. Okay, finally, we can also access a section or a slice of a string using a method called slicing. And we're going to slice using indices. But before we move on to slicing, there's something else I would like to show you, which is how you can access the last items in the string or the last characters in a string. And that is by say create. So to get the last item in the string, you use -1. Yeah, to get the last character, you use -1. So if you do this, it should return this value of O here. Yeah, like that. And this points to this value here or to that character. Okay. And if you want to get the second last, still you, instead of using now -1, you can use -2 all the way to negative whatever character you want. Okay, so if you want to access characters from the back of the string or from the end of the string, then you use negatives, with -1 being the last, -2 will be second last, -3 will be the third last, and so on and so forth. Okay, so then we can look at slicing, and slicing is whereby you want to access a section of a string. So you can use a slice, and the slice uses an operator, which is the semicolon. Yeah, this semicolon. So you specify the start index and the last index. Okay, so in this case, we have our hello string here, and this string has index from 0 to 4. So if we wanted to get from index 1 to index 3, then we can use a slice. So we want to start from index 1 and end at index 3. Then we get this. Okay, but there's a catch to this. The last index that you indicate here, so that the value of or the character in that index will not be included. So what we say is this method or this slicing, it will return the first index all the way to the last, but not including the last. Okay, because H has the index of 0, E has the index of 1, and E has been returned here, and L has the index of 2. And this other L has the index of 3, but it has not been returned, since you're saying that it will stop at 3, but it will not include 3. So if you wanted to get the third index, so you have to go to 4, like that. Okay, so that's the slicing for you. If you want to get to access a section of the string, then you can use the slicing method to do that. If you want to access a single string, a single character from the string, then you can just use the index of that character that you want to access. Okay, and this is it. We have our string called programmer here. And if we get the index of 0 from that string, we're going to get P, because programmer starts with a P. If we get the index of -1, which is the last character in the string, then we're going to get the R, because the word programmer ends with R. And if you want to get a section or slice through a section of that string starting from index 1 all the way to index 5, but not including 5, so you can pass this, the first index semicolon, and then the last index, which will not be included. Okay, so this one will return from index 1 to index 4. Okay, and if we count these, so this is index 1, 2, 3, and 4. Yeah, so index 5 is A, but it's not included here. Okay, we can also say we want to start from index 5 all the way to -2, and -2 stands for the second last character, which will also not be included in here. It will return from index 5 to the third last character, because remember we said that this second value here is not included. So it will include, it includes to this value minus 1. Yeah, like this will return from index 1 to index 4. So it's 5 minus 1. This one will return from index 5 to index -3, which whereby -2 minus -3, -1 is -3. Yeah, so you're subtracting 1 from the end here if you are using a slice. Okay, so let me know on the chat what this line of code should return. So you have our string, we call it str, and then we have negative let's just say 5 like that. So let me know what this line should return on the chart. There's no wrong answer. Okay, I can see some answers. Yeah, so let's have our one volunteer explain to us one of those who have answered the question. One of you can just unmute and tell us why do you think the answer that you've given, or what is happening here? What is happening here? Anybody?
Okay. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Fumi, go. You want to go?
Okay, so I'm actually not sure, but I think the column there, because we don't have any number first, so I think it's just going to automatically start from the first letter, and then the number 5 after the column is not going to be included in the letter that is going to give out from the output. So it's going to stop on the fourth, like number 4 from 0 to 4. 5 is not included. That's what I think.
Awesome. Yeah, that's really correct. Because here, what is happening? Remember, if we had added a 0 here, so this slice we start from 0, from index 0 all the way to index 5, but not including 5, because we said this value here -1. Yeah, so it will return from index 0 to index 4. Okay, but now since you've skipped the 0, basically what that means, it starts from the very start of the string and then return all those values between the start and this index here, but do not include this index. Okay, the same goes for sorry, the same goes for something like this. So what this means also, it starts from index 5 and go all the way to the end. Okay, so if you see the colon after a number, that means start from that index all the way to the end. And if you see the colon before the number, that means start from the very start all the way to that index, but not including that index. Okay, how about this? How about something like that? What will this line of code return? let us know what it should return and explain to us why you think it should return that. Okay, I can see one answer. Anybody else? There's no wrong answer. We are all learning here, including me. Someone can just unmute and tell us why you think, why you came up with the answer that you've given, how you came up with that answer. Somebody?
Hello.
Yep.
I think you're supposed to start with the -5.
Okay.
Where the index is at -5, which is at A.
Yeah.
All the way to the end.
Precisely. Thank you. So here what you're saying, this is the first index. Yeah. So we want to start from the index of -5. So you start from the end. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the index of 5 is at character A, and then we want to go all the way to the end. Yeah, and then we have something like this. Okay, and if this was reversed, so if we had that, it should be the other way around now. We start from 0, or the first index, or from the very start of the string all the way to index -5, but not including -5. Okay, and this is what we have. So you can see these should do the same job as this. Yeah. These two are doing the same job right now. Okay, so that's it for string, accessing individual characters in the string or slicing and through strings. Now we're going to look at a few string methods and also look at how we can manipulate strings, like doing string concatenation, string formatting. Okay, so we have a sample string here, hello world, and we're going to have several methods that you can apply on our string. One of them being the capitalize method. And the capitalize method, what it does is it will convert the first letter in that string into uppercase. So I'm just going to comment out this. Going to run that, and you see our string here, the first character in the string was lowercase, but since you have capitalized our string by calling the capitalize method on our string, so this letter has been converted into uppercase. We also have the title. The title method, what it does, it checks for the number of words in that string, and for every word, it will change the first letter in every word into uppercase. And this is what we are getting. Remember, initially, all our strings were in lowercase, but now you can see after calling the title method, our H and our W have been converted into uppercase. The rest remain as lowercase. And you may ask yourself, what if these others were in uppercase like this? What will happen when we call the title method? It will convert all of them into lowercase. Okay. The only characters that will be in uppercase once you call the title method will be the first letters or the first characters in every word. Okay, so even if it's like these characters that are in uppercase will be turned to lowercase, and only the W will be turned to uppercase and the H. Then we have the upper method. Upper method now, this turns everything into uppercase. Okay, everything, every character in the string will be turned to uppercase. Then we have the lower, which does the opposite of upper. It will turn all the characters to lowercase, like this. So if this was caps, and remember it has already been converted to caps. Sorry, no, it has not been. So let's change this to caps world. And once we run that, you can see now we have our string as hello world with world in caps. But coming down here, it has been converted into lowercase using the lower method. Then you can also look at the split method. This split method, I've explained it several times in our data science classes. Just going to uncomment that. And what this method does, it will split this string at a designated character. In this case, we're using space, yeah? So you can split it at space, or you can split it at any letter or any character at all, okay? So you're splitting it into at the position where there's a gap or there's a space. And you can see we have 3 spaces. We have 1, 2, 3. And if we go back to Sketch, so I'm going to clear this out. And we have our string, which is hello. I'm just going to space this for now. No, let me not space them. Hello. Hello, what? How are you? How are you? How are you? Question mark. Yeah. So if we split the function, if we use the split function, it's going to split, especially now here in this case, we are using, we are splitting it at the gap or at the space. So if we are using the space to split our string, then we should have something like this. Every position where there's a string, every position in that string where there's a gap, our string will be split at that point. So our first space is here. At this point, there's another space here, and there's another one here. Yeah. So our text will be split into these portions here, here, and here. And these will be added into a Python list. So you'll have something that looks like this. So it will be split into these words, hello, including the comma, because we've split at the space and the space comes after the comma, then how, then then you. And these will be added into a Python list containing these characters or these words. And you're left with something like this. You can see this is a Python list. So you're going to get to lists, don't worry. But if you see anything that is enclosed inside these square brackets, and it has items or characters separated by commas, that is probably a Python list. Okay. There are other methods. We have not exploited them all. There are other methods like the replace method, why are Evans, can you just unmute yourself and ask the question?
Hello.
Yes.
I'm asking when you split the text, these apostrophes, where are they coming from?
What?
The apostrophes that are there, these opening and closing remarks.
These ones?
Yeah, when you split of the splitting, yeah. Now that we have the hello, then comma, then comma.
I didn't get. I'm not getting you. Can you see my screen?
Yes, I can see your screen.
Is this what you're talking about? These quotation marks?
No, not the result. The result when you print out.
These ones?
Yeah, the commas that are coming, then there is now the opening and closing after each word.
Yeah, because that's a Python list. Every item in a Python list is separated by a comma. And since these are strings, they are enclosed in quotation marks. These are strings. That's why they are enclosed in quotation marks like this. Okay, remember we've talked about strings. So if you see anything that is enclosed like this inside quotation marks, that means it's a string. Okay, and every item in a Python list is separated by a comma. That we have these commas down here.
Hello.
Yes.
I also wanted to ask,
Yep.
You're saying that it is returning a list which is separated by the commas.
Yeah.
And the apostrophes means that they are list. It's a string. Eh?
Which apostrophes? Is it apostrophes or quotation marks?
Okay, those quotation marks. Eh?
Yes.
You're saying it's because it's a string. Yeah. Yet in the first sentence where we have hello world, where we were printing out hello world and it was still a string, it was not giving back a string. Does it mean that when you have a list and whatever it is that you were printing was a string, it will still return it with those quotation marks to show that it is a string?
Oh, you're talking about these hello worlds here and these ones,
yes,
right?
Yes.
Okay. The reason why these ones don't have quotation marks, it's because it's a string and that string is on the output window. Yeah. So this is the output cell of Jupyter Notebook. Yeah. So since it's on the output, it will not be printed out with those commas. We are printing out that character. So we are printing out that string. Yeah. And since we are printing out that string on the output cell of the notebook or whatever IDE you're using. Please, if you're not using the mic, just keep it on mute. So since this is on the output, we are printing out. Remember the print function will print out whatever is inside that print function into the output or the console. If you're using something like Jupyter Notebook, it will print on the console. Sorry, if you're using something like PyCharm, it will print on the console. But in Jupyter Notebook, it will print out in this output cell down here after the initial cell. Yeah, and the quotation marks are only used when you're defining a string. Yeah, when you're outputting a string, they will not be printed out, because what these quotation marks mean, they're just like what? How can I put it? They just like, it's just like a formula of display of declaring a string. Yeah, A string must be enclosed inside the quotations, but these quotations are not part of the string, okay? These quotations are not part of the string. That's why they are not printed out here, okay? But in a list, if an item is in a list and it's a string, it has to be enclosed inside quotation marks. We're going to look more into that when we get to lists. But remember, but what the question Tabitha asked was, why do we have these items here as inside quotations, but these are not in quotation? And the answer is, we are printing out the string, and these quotation marks are used to define a string. They are not part of the string. That's why they are not printed out here. Yeah, but in a list, since we have items and these items in that list are strings, we need to enclose them inside quotation marks, just like we are defining a new string. Is that clear? I hope I've answered your question. So the quotation marks are just used to define a string. They are not part of the string. They will not be printed out if you print a string, because they are not part of the string, unless you do something like this. You make them part of the string by maybe enclosing them inside another quotation like this. So whatever is inside the outermost quotation marks will be printed as part of the string. Yeah. So if we print these out, then we will see these quotations, because now these inner quotations, the single quotations, are part of the string because they have been enclosed by the double quotations. Okay. So if we print out, then you see we have string, we have these quotations. That's because they are part of the string, because they've been enclosed by these outermost quotations. Okay, but if it's something like this, the quotations are not part of the string. The string is what is enclosed inside the quotation. Hope you got that. Okay, so we move on to string concatenation. So string concatenation is basically joining together two or more strings to form one single string. Yeah, and in Python, string concatenation, you can use the plus sign. If you're using a plus sign on two strings, it means join them together. But if you use a plus sign between a number or an integer and a string, you're going to get an error, because it's like summing up a string and a number which are not compatible. Okay, so but first let's look at how you can join together two strings. And so we have the first string, string 1 and string 2. The string 1 has the value hello. String 2 is world with an exclamation. So if we wanted to join them together, we just say string 1 plus string 2. Then we can print that out. And you can see we have hello world, but there's a problem. These two words are joined together. If you don't want them to be joined together, you need to add now a space. And a space now, since these have been declared as strings, so if you wanted to add a gap, it would also be a string. Then you hit space and then you plus that. Okay, like that. And now you can see they are separate. Alternatively, you just add a space at the end of the first string like this, hello, then space. Yeah, so if you join them together, they'll have this space. Okay, so if you want to join two strings together, you use the plus sign, or you can use some string formatting methods like the F strings that you're going to look at later. Any question before we move on to integers? Okay, so integers, we'll look at integers now. And integers are simply whole numbers or numbers that do not have decimals. And integers are not surrounded by quotations. They are just numbers like that. If you're declaring a variable that has a number or an integer, then it has to be just an integer. If it's number 3, you just enter number 3. You don't type in quotations. You don't enter quotations anywhere for the integers. Yeah. So here we are creating a variable called number, and we are assigning it to the value of 3. And if you want to check the type, you can use the type method to check the type of that variable, of that integer. And now we type in we enter that, we call the type method, and inside the type method we enter this variable name, which represents 3. And now we print out the result, and you see it's an integer. Yeah, so this is an integer in Python, and you can convert numbers into integers. You can convert strings or floats into integers, and floats are basically numbers with decimals. Yeah, you can convert them into integers using the int method, int method. So here we have a variable number 1, which represents 10. Somebody tell me what data type do you think this 10 belongs to? What data type is this number 1, which represents this 10? What data type does it belong to?
Integer. String.
Yeah, it's a string because we have enclosed it inside quotation marks.
Okay.
Yeah,
Quotation.
anything that is enclosed inside quotation marks, whether it's a number, whether it's a Boolean, whether it's anything, it's a string. Yeah, it doesn't matter what value it is, it's still a string. Whether it's a number, it's a decimal, it's anything, it's basically a string because it has been enclosed inside quotation marks. Yeah. So if we print out the type for number 1, see, this is a string, okay? Because we have enclosed it inside quotation marks. And we can convert now this string. Somebody's mic is not on mute. Please mute your mics. And now we can convert this number 1 into an integer by calling the int method. Yeah, so we are assigning that to number 2, and then we are calling the int method, and then inside the int method we are passing number 1, which now represents this 10 here, which is enclosed inside quotation marks. And if we check the type now, this type is now an integer for number 2, because we've converted first number 1 into an integer using the int method, and then we have assigned that value to number 2. And if we check the value, the data type for number 2 now, it's a string. It's an integer, sorry. But initially number 1 was a string. Okay, so this method is called casting or typecasting. When you're converting a data type from you're converting a value from one data type to another. Type casting or just casting. Okay, but there's a catch to this. Yeah, anything that you convert from a string, yeah, is very important. Anything that you convert into a string, from a string to an integer, using the int method, should be the value of a number. Even though it's a string, it's a string, it should carry the value of a number. Like this is 10. Yeah, so that's why we are able to successfully convert it into an integer, because it's already a number, but a number that is in a string format. Yeah, or a number that is of string data type. But if you have something like 10 in words, this is going to throw an error because you cannot convert a word into a number. Yeah. So if we do this, so you will get a value error, invalid literal for int with base 10. So this is a word. So you cannot convert a word into a string, into an integer. Yeah. But since the value, without considering the data type, the value of this 10 here is a number without considering the data type. Yeah, right now it's an integer, it's a string, sorry, because it's enclosed inside quotations. But the intrinsic value of that value of that number one, sorry, the intrinsic value of that number one is 10, which is a number. Yeah, so you're able to convert it or to cast it into an integer. But if it's a word or anything else that cannot be a number, then it cannot be converted into an integer. Okay. Then we have number 3 here. Going to uncomment these. Number 3 is 5.3. This is a float. Float, we said they are decimal numbers with decimals. And if you check its data type, you can see it's a float. But you can also convert that float into an integer, still using the int method. Just going to uncomment that and run. So our initial value is 5.3, but we have called the int method on number 3 and assigned it to the value of number 4. And if we print out number 4 is 5, what happened? This 5.3, it has just removed the decimal part. It doesn't round it off or anything. Yeah, it will just take off this index part and remain with the whole number itself. Yeah, then that's why we have 5, which is now an integer down here. Yeah, so if you wanted to round off the nearest whole number, then there's a function for that. Then we have floats. Floats are basically numbers with decimals. We've covered that. And anything that you can do to a float, you can do anything that you can do to an integer, you can do it to a float, like mathematical operations and all that. Okay, so this is a float. The data type here is float. We can cast an integer or a string into a float. Let's say we have a new number called number 6. And if we check the type for number 6, it's an integer, but you can convert it into a string using the float method. Yeah. Initially, we were using the int. If you want to convert into integer, then you can use a float method to convert into floats. The comment is, so you're going to call the float method, then we pass in number 6. Then we're going to assign the value of that to number 7. Then we print out number 7 and its data type here. You can see now 18 has been converted to 18.0. And since it has this 0.0 here, it's no longer an integer, it's now a float. You can do the same for string. Let's say we have a string like let's say number 8, and number 8 is equals to something like 5.5. Yeah, and if you check the type for number, number 8, it should be a string. See here is a string, but you can cast it to have an integer, sorry, a float, using by saying number, let's call it number 8 again, because Python allows us to do that through something called dynamic typing. That's a little bit advanced. We're going to look at that. So you can assign these and these, and it will still work. Float, then number 8. You're taking this number 8, then we are converting it into a float, and then we're assigning that value to number 8 again. Then now you can see the number 8 value. Let's print out also number 8 and see its value. and print it out twice. Let's print it out before it's casted. And print out after it has been casted. Yeah. Sorry, this should be the data type. Should check the data type before and after. Yeah. So the data type before is a string and the data type after is a float. Okay. We also have the string method str, which now you can use to convert numbers or floats and integers into strings. Okay. So if we have a number like, let's create another number 8 here and give it the value of 88. And if we check the type, print type number 8. So this is an integer, okay? But you can convert it into a string now using, let's call this number 8 again, and we assign it to str, then number 8. So we are taking the initial number 8, we are passing it through a string method, and then we are assigning it back to a variable called number 8. And now you see what is wrong. Okay, I know what's wrong. Remember these strings that we were calling strs here? These ones. These are what are causing that problem. So I'm just going to comment them out for now. Then I'm going to rerun these. Okay, still affecting it. So I think I'm going to restart the kernel and rerun. I'm going to run. Okay, and now it's working. The reason why it's happening is because you assigned this variable here to a string, which you should not do, by the way. This is my bad. You should not assign a variable. You should not assign a variable name to a Python keyword. So this str is a Python keyword, meaning the string method. Yeah. So once you do this cell was what is happening here. This str method is going and trying to check this str here, and it's finding that the value of str is a programmer, which is not a valid Python keyword or a valid Python function. That's why it was returning the error. Okay. Right now, you should see the initial data type was an integer, but now after doing the casting, we have the data type as a string using the str method. Finally, we have data types. We have the Boolean data types, which are basically true or false. Yeah, and they are used to represent the true value of an expression. Is it true, not truth? It can be truth. The true value of an expression. Yeah, and these are mostly used when doing like conditional tests, yeah, or when we are evaluating something, yeah, especially numbers. So if you want to check whether a number is bigger than this, that expression should evaluate to false or true. Like this one here, 1 is less than or equal to 2, that is true, but the second one, 1 is greater than or equal to 2, that is wrong. because 1 is not greater than or equal to 2. So that will return false. These are very important when we get to looking at logical expressions and conditional evaluation, then we're going to look at these. But they are valid or primitive Python data types, which are booleans, integers, floats, and strings. Okay, so this should bring us to our first assignment. So head over to coding, coding rooms, sorry, head over to coding rooms. There's this assignment called data types. Open that data types. So I'm going to look at these as a student preview. So head over to coding rooms. Since you've joined this class in coding room, you'll have something that looks like this. Then scroll, you can read the instructions and scroll all the way down and open assignment workspace like that. Yeah, and the instructions will be on your side, and then you'll have an interactive environment whereby you can write your code. And there are these instructions that are very essential. Don't change the code below and don't change the code above. So this line of code, do not change it. Yeah. And the instructions are saying, so you write your code here. Write your code below. So in this line. So the instruction is saying, write a program that adds the digits in a three-digit number. E.g., if the input is 423, then the output should be 9. Yeah. And remember not to change the first 3 lines, line 1 to 3. Yeah. So you write an operation that takes wait a minute. This is the wrong assignment. Wait a minute. Don't go to that assignment. I think there's something else we need to cover before, because I think there's an input function somewhere. So before we move on to that, let's look at mathematical operations briefly, because these are just straightforward. Then we look at our first assignment. So we have our mathematical operations, and Python supports all mathematical operations that you can think of. That's why it's so good for data science. So we have subtraction or addition first. So for addition, you use the addition sign and make sure that both values are integers or floats. They are not strings. So like if you had a string here, like this, then you're going to run into an error if you run this. You're going to get this type error here, because one of them is a string. So make sure these two, the two numbers are integers. Then for add, you use the addition sign. So if you have two numbers you want to add together, you take the first number plus the second number. The subtraction, you use the dash. Addition, we use the asterisk, a single asterisk. For multiplication, for division, you use a /. And then we have finally the exponents. Like if you want to raise a number to a power of something, then you need to use double asterisk. Like, let's say we want to raise 5 to the power of 2. So that means 5 squared. Yeah. So 5 squared should be 25 in Python. So you use double asterisk. So that's what this means. Okay, so after now we are done with that. After we're done with that, then we can look at the Python's input function that will enable us to do our assignment. Yeah, and we're saying that in most software programs or applications, you need to solve an end user problem. And that means you need to interact with the user, and sometimes you need the user inputs. Yeah, so Python has a function, a built-in function called the input function that allows us to accept user inputs. Okay, and this is the function input. Okay, and how it works, how does the input function works? So the input function, when our input function executes, the program will be stopped until the user has given an input. Yeah. And then inside the input function, when you're declaring an input function, there's a message that you can pass inside that function to ask or to inform the user what is expected of them. It's optional, but it's essential, because sometimes if you leave it blank, if you don't pass in the message, then the user might not know what is expected of them. Yeah. So this is the body of an input function. So we have input, and then you can say like, what is your name? Question mark. Yeah, and close your input method. So this is the message that will be displayed. What is your name? And then you need to enter your name after that. Yeah, and remember this is a string because we are asking a question in characters. So this needs to be, the message needs to be enclosed inside quotation marks. Can be single, can be double, either should work. Yeah, and the beauty of this, you can now assign our input function to a variable. Let's say, let's call it something like name. So you can say name is equals to this input here. Like that. So you can say name is equals to input, and further down the program now, if you want to access that input, the input value. So instead of fetching this again and asking the user, so you just fetch the name. So if you wanted like to print out, you can say print name, and whatever will be printed is the value that the user passed here in the input. If you are just joining us, please mute your mic. Okay, and the input function, whatever you enter inside the input function is automatically converted into a string. Yeah, whether you entered a number, a Boolean, a float, or an integer, whatever you enter, everything will be converted into a string automatically. Now, if you entered a number and you wanted like to do some mathematical operation on that number, then you need to convert it back into an integer or a float using typecasting again. Yeah. And then after now the users entered their input, then the flow of the program continues. And this is very important. Remember, whatever will be returned here by this input method is a string. Doesn't matter the input that you entered, whether you entered a number or a Boolean or a float or an integer or a string, everything will be converted into a string. So to use it in mathematics, whether it's a number, then you need to convert it back into an integer or a float. Okay. Let's take an input here. Yeah. By calling the input function and then the message is enter some input. Yeah, and we run that and we enter, let's say 22. Yeah, and you can see this 22 is enclosed in these quotations, but you can also assign it to a variable and print out that variable. And that's what we are doing here. We are assigning the name to a variable. We are assigning the input function to a variable name, and inside the input function, we have a message that will be displayed for the user to understand what is required of them. And here we are saying, please enter your name. So you can see we are printing the name, but our program has been paused here. It will not proceed further until we've entered our input here. So let's say my name is Regan, and you see now Regan is being printed here. And remember, we've said the data type assigned to the input is always a string. Doesn't matter what you entered. So if you do something like this, enter number 1, which is an input. So the input message is enter first number, then enter second number. We are assigning that to number 2. And then we say divide is equals to number 1 divided by number 2. Then we print out the divide. Yeah. So if we do that, we enter the first number is 6. Second number is 2. And we try to run that. This operation here will return an error, the type error, because now these two are strings. Yeah, even if we entered them as numbers, that input function, the input function converts everything into strings. We've already said that. So you cannot divide strings. Yeah, so that's why we are getting errors here. So for this to work, we need to convert it back into an integer or a float. Okay, by doing this. Yeah, by wrapping now the input function inside an integer or a float. Okay, so this can be a float, can be an integer, it doesn't really matter. This can be a float, this can be an integer. Yeah, since you're performing mathematical operations, numbers and integers both mean the same thing. Yeah, so if now we enter our first number and our second number, then we get the output, which is 3.0. Okay, and the division in Python, if you divide two numbers, they are going to return a float. Doesn't matter whether they're integers or not. So if we add this as an integer, and we still did the same 6, 3, you see we have 2.0, and this is this is a float. Yeah, so in Python, the default value that is returned when you divide two numbers is always a float, but you can convert that back into an integer using the int method if you want to. Okay, so this should bring us to our first assignment. We've looked at the input function and the data types and everything to do with the input function. Yeah, so let's look at our first assignment, which is, why is it? Which is this data type here. Going to student. Yeah, it's here. The data type assignment. So scroll all the way down. So since I'm a teacher, I have to go to student preview to view what is happening. These assignments should take you just 5 minutes. Yeah, because we also have the project to build and we have another assignment. So today we have a total of 3 assignments, I think. So go to the assignment, the first assignment, the data types, then open assignment workspace. And here are the instructions. You're supposed to write a program that takes in a 3-digit number and then sums up or gets the sum of those three numbers, yeah, and returns that value. Okay, so don't interfere with this. So this is the input variable that you'll be using, 3-digit number. Okay, so this will ask the user for input. If you do this and run your terminal, and if you want to run your code to see whether it's working the way you want it to work, then you can hit this run button here at the top. So if I hit run, you see it's asking me for 3-digit number. So I enter like 455. Yeah. And once I enter, the code inside here should now fetch this number, get these individual numbers, and sum them, get the sum, and then print out the sum using the print method. Once you're done, go to submit, and your assignment will be tested against some of the preset tests that I configured for this assignment. So it should be something like this. Once you're done with your code and you're satisfied with what you've written, then you need to go So I'm going to test it. So you go to submit, and submit will give you something like, let it finish, something like this, yeah? And you see the ticks here, test 2, we have test 1, and you passed test 1, test 2, and test 3, depending on the number of tests I set for that assignment. So go to coding rooms, sit on that assignment. I give you 5 minutes. So by 7:20, you should be done so that you can go through it together first and then look at the next assignment. So go there and do that. Just 5 minutes. I'll be looking at the submissions. And I can also see those of you who have not started. I don't want to call out their names, but you can see yourselves on the screen. You've not started the assignment.
Hello.
Yes.
I seem to be in a different assignment. The one that I'm seeing is write a program that prints the number of characters in a user's name.
Okay. User's name. So that is a different assignment. I think that one is if the input functions assignment, and that's not what we are doing right now. We are doing the data types assignment. So go back and check the data types assignment. Have you seen it?
Not yet. Oh, I've seen it.
You've seen it?
Data types.
Yeah, data types.
Yes, I have.
Yeah, that's what we are working on right now. Someone is saying they're unable to open the assignment. How can I help? Because everyone else is working on the assignment, so that seems to be an issue on your side. Can see one submission. I'm going to add you 3 more minutes because some of you are just starting. And don't worry, even if you don't get it right, just try, give it a try. We are going to look at it in class in a few minutes. We're going to look at it together in a few. Yeah, if you joined us late, you need to create a coding rooms account and a Replit account. So I go to replit.com. Replit.com, create an account for Replit as a student and coding rooms also as a student. So go to coding rooms as well and create an account as a student. Then once you're done with that, I'm going to add you to give you the link for the course. Then you can join the course. Okay, so I think we're going to look at it in class. Think some of you have made the try. Some of you have made submissions. Some are correct, some are not correct. You can see the scores. Yeah. There are a few submissions and most of you are still in progress. So let's just look at it together. So we are writing a program that adds the 3 digits in a 3-digit number. If the input is 423, then the output should be 9, which is 4 plus 2, which is 6, 6 plus 3 is 9. Yeah, so that's what we want. So what we do, let me navigate to the assignment. So here below, write your code. We want to fetch this 3-digit number now. That is our input. Then we want to get the first number, calling it F number. It will be, we're going to use its index and the first number as the index of 0. So it will be 3-digit number, index 0. And then remember, we said that this is a string. That's why we are able to access the values or the characters in a string using the index. Yeah, so to convert it into a number so that you can sum, or to convert it into an integer so that you can sum it, we're going to use the int function. Yeah, then the second number, S number. We're going to do the same. So, but this time we're going to get the index of 3 or of 1, sorry, because it's a second number. So I'm going to say integer, then 3-digit number, then index 1. So that's the second number. Then we do the same for the third number. We're going to call it T number. Do the same, integer, then 3-digit number. Then its index is 2 because it's the third character. Then what we do now, we want to get to add. Or get the total. Total is equals to first number plus second number plus third number. Then I want to print out the total. Okay, and then we run. So you're going to be asked to type a 3-digit number. Then we're going to say 423. Then we enter, and the total will be 9. Okay, so the key really was to splitting the strings and converting them into integers, and then doing the mathematical operation of summing them. Okay. So after the class, just go back to that and solve that assignment. I'll check for the submissions and see how many of you have gotten it right. Okay, and it doesn't matter. You don't have to be to follow the same. Like your code doesn't have to be the same as mine, as long as you solve the problem. Yeah, so there are different ways to approach this. Yeah, so I could also have done this and converted it down here. Yeah, when I'm summing them, I can do this. Okay, and remove this and bring all these down here. So I convert them after splitting them, or I can just do this. So there are different solutions, but make sure you get the same answer and you understand the concepts. That's what matters the most. Okay. All right. Any questions about that, about the solution? Any question before you look at the next assignment? Let me know in the chat. Any questions? For those who are just joining us, I'm really sorry, but you cannot go back to the start. So you'll have to rewatch the recording.
Sorry, please. I have a question.
Yes.
Yeah. So the integer here for the total equals integer first number. We only have integer in this first place.
Here.
Okay, that's if we don't have it up here, right? If we don't have it up.
Yeah, you can. This is an alternative for having it up here.
Okay.
So you can have it up here, or you can bring them down here, all of them. You can also do this. You can also bring these down here. And this one here. And then close those integers and remove these here from the top. Okay. This is a way we can refactor this code to make it a little bit, to make it even more shorter. Yeah, we can instead of creating these variables, first number, second number, we can just bring these down here and convert them into integers directly, then sum them up. But for now, don't worry about shortening the code. Just understand what is happening. Then with time, you'll be able to shorten the code. Yeah. So we are going to create variables for each number. Then we're going to fetch the numbers, and then we are going to convert those numbers now into integers, and then we sum them. Okay. Any other question? But make sure you, after the class, you look at the assignment again and try to redo it again without following the recording first. And if you get stuck again, then you can follow the recording. So we have another assignment. I think I was really in a hurry today when I was creating these assignments. So I'm sorry about that. Next time they'll be spaced so that we start with one at the very top, then at the middle of the class, we do another one, then at the end, we do another one, instead of doing them at the end of the course, at the end of the class, all of them. So you have this input function assignment. So the instructions are: write a program that prints the number of characters in a user's name. You might need to Google the function that calculates the length of a string. Yeah, and I've added an article where you can get that function. Yeah, and your program should work with different functions. Yeah, so this is the input, like my name, and then it will return the length of my name, the number of characters in my name. Okay, then once you're done, submit your work and see your score. So I give you another 5 minutes. We finish that, then we start the next assignment, which is creating a basic BMI calculator. So go ahead, launch the input function assignment. Then go to Open Assignment Workspace. And then you write your code below. So you should have an input. You can give it any variable, and then get the number of characters in that string, and then print out. Violet, is that link that I've posted on the chat. Use that link to join the class. The link that is on the chat, use that link to join the class in coding rooms. So guys, 5 minutes are almost over. Should be winding up. And if don't worry if you don't get it or if you don't finish it within the specified time, you'll always go back and look at where you went wrong and learn from it. How do you test the code before submission? Someone is asking that. You just run your code in the. Let me show you. You run your code here. Once your terminal is ready, down below, then there's this green button that will appear here. You run that. You have to see the results of your code. Here, this run button. So you write your code here. So print something, then you run this, and the results will be displayed here in the terminal. You can increase the size if you want to. You can also push this side to the side if you want to. Then get the output here. And once you're satisfied with that output, then go ahead and submit. So I think the 5 minutes are over. Let me see how many of you have done the submit. And if you've not done, if you have not submitted also, don't worry. It's part of the learning. Yeah, I can see some of you have submitted. Some of you have gotten scores. Yeah, you can see some have even got it. Yeah, but if you have not got it, please don't beat yourself up. So let's create our solution here. So what is required of us? Write a program that prints the number of characters in a user's name. Okay, you might need to Google. I've provided the link for that article that explains how you can get the length. So what you're going to do, you're going to ask for username, and you're going to say name is equals to input And we're going to ask the user to enter your name. Then we're going to get that name now. Length of name is equals to, we have the len function in Python, and the len function will return the length of a sequence. It can be a string, it can be a list, it can be a tuple. We're going to look at list and tuples, don't worry, but any sequence, it will return the length of that sequence, the number of characters or the number of items in that sequence, whether it's a list, whether it's a tuple, whether it's a string. Yeah, so we're going to get len, then inside the len function we pass in our name. So what is happening here? We are asking the user to input their name. Then once the user inputs their name, that name will be assigned to this variable name here. Then this name is what we pass through the len function, which counts the number of characters in that name and then prints out using the print statement. And we're going to print the length of the name like that. When we run this, what is your name? I'm going to say my name is that, and the number of characters is 5. Here I said 6. This is 5, not 6. Going to correct that here. It's really simple. So I'm going to correct these to 5. And once we reload now, it will be 5. So that's it. That's how you can do that.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Now, after I put in the name and the input, enter your name.
Yeah.
I went straight to print.
Yeah.
Then print. Then we have the name.
Yeah, it should work. If you did this, it should also work like this.
It
Then,
worked. It ran properly.
Yeah.
But then when I submitted, it tells me it is 0%. So I didn't understand.
Same here too.
Okay. So I think I'll check the tests. I think it's the test, or is the test bench? Oh, okay. I know what went wrong. So just briefly do this. Make sure the text that you enter here is this text.
What is your name?
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Make sure the message that you enter inside your input method, it's what is your name, and don't forget this space after the question mark. Yeah, and then test, that should give you the right I forgot to say that this message is when you're setting up the tests in CodeRoom, you need also to specify this message of the input. So if your message was not the same as mine, then you're going to get a wrong score, but doesn't mean you're wrong. So make sure that this input text here is the same as the one I have here, then submit. If you're not able to solve it, don't worry, just go back to the recording and try to work to learn those concepts that we've looked at so far that will enable you to solve the assignment. And make sure by the end of maybe by the time we meet for the next class, you've submitted and your score is 100%. I'll check that. Okay, so I hope you've corrected that. So the next assignment, we're going to create a simple BMI calculator, and that is also in the assignment. Go back to the assignments, then go to the BMI calculator. And then you have the instructions. So the instructions say, write a program that calculates the body mass index, the BMI, from the user's weight and height. BMI is calculated by dividing a person's weight in kilograms by the square of their height in meters. And this is the formula. BMI is equals to weight in kilograms divided by height in meters squared. Yeah. And the example input should be weight is equals to 88 and height is equals to 1.8. And this should return a whole number. There's this note here. Convert the results into a whole number. And that also you might need to Google how to round numbers to the nearest whole numbers in Python. Yeah, so you need to round off, like this one here, you can see it's 27.160, whatever, but our output should be just 27. So you get the weight from the user, the height from the user, then do the calculation, and then return a whole number of the result. So I'm also going to get a student preview. Then go to open assignment workspace. And there are a few constants that you don't need to change. Don't change the height. So the height you will get from this input here, and the weight also. So your calculation, you just write it below, bearing in mind the height is this variable here and the weight is this other variable here. Okay, so you write your code below here. Don't change these values or this code here. So I'll give you, let's say, 5 minutes. It's relatively easy. We've looked at the mathematical operations. We know what our input function does and what it returns and how to cast our data types. Yeah. So basically you have all the tools that you need for this. I'm giving you 5 minutes. So by 7, let me give you 7 minutes. By 7:45, 55, sorry. Ivan Sokot, please mute your mic.
Okay, mighty.
Okay, guys, you made your submissions. And again, if you've not gotten it right, don't worry, just go back to the recording and work your way through the solution. Okay, so let's solve these together. So what is happening? We already have an input function that asks the user for their height and their weight in kilograms, sorry, not kilometers. So we are going to calculate our BMI. And remember the formula for BMI. But first, we need to cast that height and weight into integers, because remember, or floats, specifically floats, because the height of a person can be 1 point something and the weight can be 5 or 20 point something. Yeah. So let's create a new height. Which takes now the initial height and converts it into a float, not an integer. It will take the height the user inputs, then new weight. Also a float that takes in the weight that the user inputs. Then what now happens? You're going to calculate BMI, which will now be the new weight, which has been converted into a float, divided by new height times new height, or you can say squared. Okay, so this should work for us, but remember, this could be decimal. So to have, remember, we said we want our answer in as an integer or as a whole number. So we need now to first round off. We're going to say BMI rounded equals to the round function from Python, which takes two parameters. One is the number and two is the number of decimal places. But the number of decimal places can be optional if you want it returned as a whole number. Yeah. So you are going to take the BMI. We can add the number of decimal places is equals to 0, but since it's a whole number, you can leave it like that. But if you wanted like 2 decimal places, you need to add 2 as well. But since we are interested in that as a whole number, we are going just to pass the BMI and ignore the number of decimal places. And then we print out our BMI that has been rounded off to the nearest whole number. BMI rounded. Then we can need to reload my terminal, then run. So it will ask me for the height, which could be 1.8 meters. And then the weight is 88 kilograms. And what is wrong? New, oh, sorry. This is height, not weight. This should be height. This is new height times new height, or you can say new height squared. $1.888. Again, something is up. New weight divided by
Should that be in brackets?
you can have it in brackets. But it shouldn't, it's not necessary, it's not really necessary, because remember these calculations in Python follow something called the BODMAS. It starts with the brackets, then division, then multiplication. Yeah, so this division will come before. Yeah, this division will come before, so you need to enclose these inside brackets. But if the multiplication came before, you don't need to worry about that. Okay, so what was happening is that this was executing. So it was dividing new weight by new height, then multiplying new height. So you need to enclose these inside brackets like that. Okay, and now our BMI is 27. And if we run our tests, you can see our tests have been passed. You have a tick here, and we also have a tick in the first test. That means our test was passed. Okay, so this was really the catch. First, you need to convert these inputs into numbers. Then this one here was, I think, what challenged you. But you could also have said, you could also have said squared like that, and then divided by the square. That should work. So 1.8, then 88, and this should give us 27. Yeah, if you use the square, you don't need to like wrap it inside parentheses. Okay, so make sure you go and check that out. Then finally, our final project is to create a cab fare based on this format here, or on this system here in our notes. So we want our base fare to be 100. We want the cost per kilometer to be 27. Then cost per minute is 4. Yeah, so we need to enter our distance and the time taken. And then our program needs to be able to calculate that for us, like this one here. And you can also add this ASCII art here. Yeah, you can see this beautiful ASCII art. So you can go to this site, ASCII art generator. Then you can type anything like you want, like cab fare. And then you can also select the font that you want. You can have blocks like this if you want to. Then you copy this, and then you paste it. For me, I pasted it in a different file called art.py. Then in Python, you can import whatever is inside the art.py. You can see inside the art.py, you can see inside my art.py, I have this ASCII art, which I've assigned to a variable log. So if you go now to the just a minute. if you go to the main.py, so in the art.py, we have our logo here, which is a variable. Then inside our main.py, which is the main body of our program, we have imported the logo from the art. So you can import the logo from the art, then you print out your logo here. Print logo, and it will display this logo. Then you can write the code below that. And we have these constants here: the base fare, the cost per kilometer, and cost per minute. So these are what you're going to use. So first, you get the user input for the kilometers covered and the time taken. Then for the time, you multiply by cost per, for the time, you multiply by cost per minute. And for the kilometers, cost for all the kilometers, you multiply the kilometers covered by cost per kilometer, then you sum up. Then you can ask whether they want to give the driver a tip, and if they want, then you enter the percentage of the tip that you want to give. Then it will populate the total amount of fare that you need to pay together with the tip. And if you enter a tip percent of 0, then it will also have 0. It will return only the fare without the tip. Okay, so the Replit link is in your notes, but please, I availed it for you because you're not going to code this live in class. So this is the link to that Replit that contains the code. But first of all, go to your own Replit and create that project. Try to create that project, yeah? And if you're not successful, refer to the code, okay? And then maybe in the next class, we are going to look at to solve this project first before we begin our next class. Okay, so make sure you do that. So if you want to create a new Replit in your Replit account, just go here, go to my Replit, or you don't even need to go to my Replit. There's this menu button here on the far left. Click that and create. Then the project that you're creating is Python, and then you type in the title of your Replit. Okay, this can be my Replit or whatever project you're working on. Then you create, okay, and then you start working on that Replit. So try that project. If you get stuck, look at the Replit with the code. You can also fork it to your own Replit, but first of all, make sure you've given it a good try before you look at the code. And then in the next class, we're going to look at it so that you can see how we break down that problem. Okay, I wish we could do this every day, but it's not possible. So we're going to do it again on next Thursday. So make sure in between you keep showing up, you keep coding, keep learning. Yeah, don't let this be the last session you write some code before we meet next time. So in between today and next Thursday, make sure you've gone through everything that we've covered and more. Yeah, you can look at those functions, you can look at those string methods that we didn't look at, yeah, before we meet in the next class. So make sure every day you're doing something, you're looking at a piece of code and trying to break it down, or you're trying to create your own, formulate your own problems that you can solve using whatever we've learned so far. Okay, you can also improve the BMI app to do something else or to do better. Okay, so you can improve on all those projects that we've worked on. If you got stuck anywhere, follow the recording and make sure that you've done or you've submitted those assignments before next time. Yeah, I look for platform where we're going to host the recording, because I don't know if we're allowed to host it on the classes. I'll ask Duncan if he's okay with that, then we're going to do it. But if it's not part of the course, then we're going to figure out where we can host it. Yeah, but from next class, we are going to hold all our classes in coding rooms as opposed to Zoom. Because this Zoom account